Kira ran toward shelter, her body badly torn up and too weak to fly. Anton, head of the werewolves, was not far behind. Kira's high-pitched cry reached the ears of the vampires, who had now taken flight toward her. Anton could smell them coming and gave up the chase.
"We are not done here,"
said Anton.
"The next time I come for you, you'll never see me coming."
Wars between werewolves and vampires are nothing new in these lands. What is new is the fact that their numbers were dwindling down to a handful on both sides. Yet, both sides hated humans more than each other. They would rather die out than create more of their kind with humans. Each new generation of monsters would have more and more human traits, which made them less brutal and vicious. One such creation was Tanner, a young and newly turned werewolf. For being a new werewolf, he had a talent for killing. He was not just brute strength, he was fast, able to cut down 10 villagers in seconds. He was an asset to the pack, but he had a secret, one that would surely get him killed if the others ever found out. He was infatuated with an older vampire called Eve. For whatever reason or lack of it, Tanner didn't think all vampires were so evil. Eve was the oldest of the vampires, not just deadly, but also beautiful. Most men and women could not resist her. Some would willingly go into her embrace knowing they'd pay with their lives. For Eve, humans were just dinner, nothing more, nothing less. Their cries and yells for mercy would annoy her so much that she would snap their necks just to shut them up before feasting. And afterward, she would toss the bodies with a fling of her wrist like trash. Tanner was not human, not anymore. He was a wolf. And in his human form, he was strikingly handsome. Eve was not just attracted to Tanner's looks, but also to his naivety, something she believed humans had lost long ago. Later that night, Terra, the second oldest of the vampires, demanded a meeting.
"I've called you here because we can no longer coexist with the werewolves. It's got to be them or us, and if you want it to be us, we'll have to work together."
Hard looks and hisses came from the darkness.
"How do you suppose we beat them? They have that young one who could dispatch most of us before we could kill even one wolf."
More hisses arose. Terra screamed a high-pitched cry that could shatter windows half a mile away.
"Silence! We will ambush the young stupid one. We'll have him chase one of us to a pit that we will have ready for him. Once he falls in, we will crush him to death with boulders. Then we will attack the rest of them and finish them off."
"What say you, Eve?"
echoed a voice from the darkness. Eve stood tall and majestic. There was a long silence. Her eyes went from midnight black to blood red.
"I say they will pay for what they did to Kira."
The room once filled with silence was now replaced with hisses. Tanner was sitting outside a huge cave that the pack would use as a refuge when needed. He was deep in thought, wondering what Eve was doing. He could not wait for their next meeting. Both knew what they were, but either one seemed to care. The forest was huge and thick, miles to get lost in, far enough that the other vampires could not reach Eve's mind, and far enough that the werewolves could not pick up Tanner's scent. Tanner's daydreaming was quickly interrupted by a mental message from Eve.
"Quick, come meet me now. Hurry."
No sooner had the last syllable finished when he was almost at the halfway point. Once there, Eve wasted no time talking.
"Tanner, let's run off together right now. You said you wanted me. So here's your chance, let's go."
What's going on? Why the rush? What's the matter?
Eve, never the one to panic, said calmly,
"We haven't much time, but if you have to know now, the vampires have set a trap for you. They want to ambush you."
So what?
Tanner said defiantly.
I can take them.
"Maybe,"
said Eve.
"but you can't take all of them."
Eve continued.
"If a war breaks out between them, so be it. Let them kill themselves. We have all we need. And all we need is each other.
This was what Tanner always wanted. So they went that night deeper into the forest to find a place of their own, to start a new life together. That night the battle ensued. The werewolves were outnumbered, but if Tanner had been there, it wouldn't have mattered because they still ended up defeating the vampires. It wasn't till later that night when the werewolves found Tanner's body. His neck was almost non-existent. They knew who or what had caused it. They warned him over and over, vampires can't be trusted. They don't have emotions. They can't feel anything for anyone, not even for their own kind. Eve did her part to even the odds against the werewolves, knowing the vampires would win without Tanner. And what about Tanner? Well, in a smorgasbord world of humans, there will always be other pretty boys to play with, she thought. As she got closer to the castle ruins, she heard no victory cries, nothing, not a sound. Cautiously, she entered. Of the few vampire bodies that lay on the floor, one thing was clear. The vampires had lost.
Oh well,
She sighed.
I kept my end and did my part. If they couldn't handle their end, too bad. Easy come, easy go.
Dawn was now approaching soon. As she prepared herself for sleep, she heard twigs snapping just outside the castle. She looked up and saw werewolves everywhere. There was no place for her to run.